Hi, everyone. Sorry, we're a little late. I was talking.
I was also talking.
We were talking together, catching up on my possibly broken toe and Mary Lou's non-functioning Achilles tendon.
Yes, it's sad for both of us.
We're hobbled over here, but luckily the live stream doesn't require foot anything. So thank you for joining. This is Where Are All the Women? And I'm Megan Murphy, of course. And I'm here with Mary Lou Singleton, who, if you aren't yet familiar, you should be by now. But in case you're not, Mary Lou is a nurse, practitioner, a herbalist, witch, my angel mother, and I think I'm forgetting something. Is there a third thing you are? Midwife.
I'm kind of for that too.
Duh.
That's it. That's all the things I'm.
Okay. And I'm just like, according to Twitter, I'm like a rabid feminist screaming incoherently, which is always funny because I feel like I was like kicked out of feminism like some time ago, but like when convenient. Men like to bring it back and be like, why would I listen to you since you're a crazy feminist? And I was like, am I? Okay. I guess I'll be like a red-pilled MRA and a rabid feminist at the same time. Hi, Megan. Megan says that her dad tore his Achilles once. That's a brutal injury.
Oof. I hope it's not actually torn. I hope it's just inflamed.
Yeah, it's probably just inflamed. As a not doctor who's not seen your Achilles tendon, don't know anything about the Achilles tendon.
I trust you, though. I do trust you.
It is awful. Like I don't know if I broke my baby toe or fractured my baby toe this week by bashing it into the wall on my roof for no reason at all. It was like bright. It was like noon. It wasn't dark. It wasn't like I couldn't see. I was not intoxicated. I just walked into the wall for no reason and then had to cancel everything. And like, I couldn't even go to the store by myself for at least like a few days. I couldn't put shoes on. I was like, okay, I guess this is why people get married and have children because they break their toe. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, thanks for joining everyone. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. I've put all of Mary Lou's links down below if you're watching on YouTube, but her website is enchantedfamilymedicine.com. And I am, of course, on Substack at meganmurphy.ca. Subscribing there really helps. Subscribing here on YouTube really helps. So yeah, like and subscribe. If you have comments and questions, use the live chat, preferably the super chat so that I actually see the question, but I'll try to keep an eye on the live chat if I can. I have been like people on Instagram have been telling me that I have the wrong take on Israel, which is it's funny because I don't have a take on Israel. Like I'm like it's very frustrating because people want you to have an uneducated, uninformed opinion. Like I have opinions on various things that have happened. I have opinions on like the protesters and the protests, and I have opinions on Hamas, and I have opinions on rape and murder. And I guess like war, like it's like I'm not an expert on this conflict, and I don't think that 99% of the people who are impassioned about this conflict are experts on this conflict, certainly not the protesters and certainly not the people screaming at me on Instagram because I haven't, condemned what they think Israel is doing to Palestine. But like, I'm not going to take some like impassioned, unequivocal position on something that I don't have that position on and that I don't really fully understand. And, and I'm trying to understand it as best I can by reading books and listening to interviews and podcasts and blah, 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 but I don't. So I have opinions on things that I think that I'm informed on and can form opinions on. But I think it's weird that it's like, well, I took an opinion on something that I don't fully understand, so you should too.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I think that's stupid. I think we'd all be wiser if we didn't pretend to be fully informed and informed enough to have like opinions to the extent that we can order other people to share our opinions. I don't know.
I agree. I think there's just such a manufactured nature to this that everyone who cares so much about Palestinians, they don't seem to be cared about all the other wars going on, all of the other oppressed people, the 200,000 Syrians who died relatively recently in the conflict in that country, right next to where the Palestinians live. What was going on with ISIS? Like it feels like there's a manufactured zeitgeist that people are just hooking into. And that concerns me. It just feels like groupthink to me, what's happening.
Yeah, it feels like the exact same thing as what happened when BLM began, which is also that a bunch of, feminists and whatnot, people who followed me screamed at me for not posting a black square or for not saying anything about BLM at the time. And, it was the same. I was like, I mean, first of all, I don't trust these kinds of movements, and I don't trust these activists. And I do actually think that critical thinking is important and not jumping to reactions. So I will try to, not say anything until I have something of worth to say. And I'm not sure why that's seen as a bad thing. But yeah, it's like, okay, all these exact same people, the exact same people who jumped on board the BLM train and whatever the current thing is politically and activism wise, are now, shouting free Palestine and accusing anyone who isn't shouting their slogans. It's not that, again, I have not taken some big position on this conflict. It's just that I haven't taken their position and repeated their mantras, and I'm skeptical of their activism and of their mantras. And it's like this, I don't know, like communist China kind of thing where it's like, you gotta repeat after me, otherwise you're an enemy and a traitor to the state.
Yeah, that's what it feels like every day in my online sphere. I see people posting, if you're not using your voice to promote the cause of Palestinians, you're a terrible genocidal bigot and history will judge you poorly. And it's like, no, I get to decide how to use my voice. And I'm not part of this war at this. I mean, my tax dollars are part of this war, as they are, so many wars. And I've had an issue with that since I could vote and started working and saw my taxes going away. And I think that's worth talking about. But the focus doesn't seem to be on that. The focus is, there is a real pro-Hamas, sentiment arising in these protests that concern me. That's upsetting. There are people who are still defending the October 7th attacks. No one's talking about the hostages. Just, the fact that there are still even American citizens being held hostage. And it doesn't seem to be about the right focus to me. I think people just like to do a movement. People like to get caught up in a charismatic, exciting mob, right? People love that. I don't like it so much. Yeah, people love the mob. I'm terrified of the mob. It's probably from lifetimes of witch burnings. Mobs concern me.
Fair.
Is that right?
Mobs holding pitchforks. I don't like them. They make me feel nervous.
I get nervous. I assume I'm not actually like with the mob. It's like the mob's against me is sort of my first assumption. I just feel like a mob can turn on you at any minute, and we've seen that. Yeah.
And they will. Yeah, I mean, I think that what I have been discovering, which was not a happy discovery for me, but I think that it's that there's some people, but they're in a minority of people who sort of more inherently go against the grain and are not inclined when there's like a mob mentality or like everybody's saying this, everyone's doing this, to be like, okay, well, that's not the thing I want to do. And I think you're like that and I'm like that, but most people are not like that. And it's not necessarily like, I don't know, it's not because they're bad or necessarily dumb. I'm sure plenty of them are dumb, but you know, I think it's that, like, I think that people have evolved in that way to go along with the tribe so that they don't get ostracized from the tribe. I think it's got to be kind of inherent in some sense, but it's so dangerous. And yeah, it's depressing to think, okay, well, there's only going to be a minority of people who are going to be like, hey, wait, stop. Like, let's think about this. Let's not react. Let's not jump on board. Especially because that kind of mentality and that kind of behavior can turn into fascism and communism and the Holocaust.
Right. And it's important to remember it was student-led movements that fueled all of those things, right? The college students in Maoist China were the ones killing their professors and their parents and the dentist and anyone bourgeois, right? They were just they were literally the Red Guard, the forefront of it. The same happened with the Hitler Youth. It's people like, oh, all throughout human history, college students have always been on the side of righteousness, and I disagree with that. I think that there's quite a bit of
was what I responded to, and that's when people started screaming at me that they always, you know, if you say anything that isn't what they want you to say around Free Palestine or Gaza or Israel is evil or whatever, then it's like you're a Zionist or you're pro-Israel or you don't care about the dead babies in Gaza or whatever it is. You're choosing the side of the oppressor. But yeah, I just, for people who didn't see, there was this guy who tweeted that his name was Jeremy Flood. I hadn't heard of him before, but he's got this red rose next to his name, which signals what they're part of the socialist, I don't know, the Socialist Party of the USA or something like that. It has something to do with that. But he said, oh, there's two. Hold on, I got the second one, but not the first one pulled up here. A good law of history is that if you ever find yourself opposing a student movement while siding with the ruling class, you are wrong every single time in every era, no matter the issue. Oh yeah, he's part of the NYC chapter of the Democratic Socialists, the DSA. That's what that red rose symbol means. And it's like, I mean, first of all, it's stupid. It's stupid to say if you're ever not on the side of blah, then you're automatically wrong. That's just never going to be true. But second, yeah, not all student-led movements have been right.
No, they haven't. And I know I live in a propaganda state. I have no idea what's actually happening because I'm not there. But what we're seeing about these protests is just laughable. Like these activists are coming from this coddled generation, this upper middle class strata of society and particular age, where they in challenging authority also want the authorities helicoptering them and taking care of them and bringing them snacks and making sure they're safe. And it is a completely different phenomenon than any activism I've ever witnessed before. This is it's comical what's happening. And I think we all saw the PhD student at Columbia saying that the college needed to bring them food and water because it was humanitarian aid. And then Alicia Laban, who people really should be following, she is Iranian refugee, basically a women's rights activist who can't go to Iran anymore. She'll be killed. And she was saying these students are LARPing as Gazans, right? In their mind, they are the Palestinians and the administration is Israel and they need humanitarian aid to come in. And I contrast this with the hunger strikers of the past, who the threat was, if it was nonviolent civil disobedience, that the threat was, if you don't concede to our demands for our rights, like the suffragettes, like the IRA, like the student hunger strikers of the 60s, we will die. If you don't bring justice, we will die on your watch. And that was the threat of the hunger strike, of making the people in power look bad, right? The suffragettes were literally like arrested, chained, and they were fed like foie groggies, right? They had poured into them so they would not die for the right to vote, because the government, the men in power who didn't want them to vote, knew if they died, the whole sympathies of the country would be with the suffragettes. When Bobby Seale died, not Bobby Seale, I'm sorry, that's a different movement. When Bobby Sands in the IRA died in the hunger strike in prison, where the IRA was asking to be treated as a military force. They believe that we are the representatives of our own country when we kick out the occupying forces. Instead, they were being treated as terrorists and as, just being treated as regular prisoners. The hunger strike was to be recognized as military combatants and to have the international rights afforded to soldiers in captivity. Bobby Sands died, and it did turn the tide in terms of people's opinion of the Irish liberation movement. These students are telling the university, you have to bring us snacks because that's your responsibility to us as our nanny state. And it's laughable to me.
Yeah, she was that woman, that Columbia student was claiming that, the university was planning to block deliveries of food to them. And the reporter was like, but that hasn't happened. Like, what are you talking about? She was like, well, we just want to make sure that it's not going to happen. And the reporter was like, okay, but that nobody's blocking deliveries of food to you. And also in the, I read one of the notes on Twitter is a great addition to Twitter, but one of the notes specified that the campus dining was still open because she was complaining that, after she was called on, like, wait, you want the university to deliver food to you while you're occupying the university, and you want us to cater food in for you, and she was like, well, for the students who've paid for meal plans, like they didn't not have access to food, they didn't not have access to water. It wasn't a real thing. You're like, exactly, they were LARPing as Gazans, and these are the elite. I mean,
yes,
I guess we can quibble about what we mean when we say the elite, because sometimes you say the elite and people think that you're just talking about Bill Gates or Jeffrey Epstein or whatever. But if we're talking about the most privileged in North America, it's these kids. Like, these are the kids who come from the richest families, who do have a lot of power in America, who are going to Columbia so that they can advance into elite positions of power in society. They're already set up. They're already on track to do that. They're not marginalized in any way. And they're unwilling to suffer anything. They're risking nothing in protesting. They won't be arrested. As soon as there's a threat of being kicked out of school, they give up. They want everything to be very comfortable for them. That's not what these kinds of, if you're protesting something serious, there is always a risk, because otherwise you wouldn't really need to protest it. But they're just, it's hard not to make fun of them.
That's how I feel. It's very disheartening to me. I'd like to see some toughness in our youth, and some understanding of history. It's really fascinating. And people are comparing it to the college protests that happened in the U.S. during the Vietnam War. And to me, it's incomparable. That those were young people protesting the fact that their peers were being harvested by the U.S. war machine and killed in a country that had no rational connection to our national security. And teenage boys were, I've said this before, like, can you imagine what it was like to be an 18-year-old boy watching the news at night to see if your social security number was coming up, to see if you're getting shipped off to war the next week?
Hell.
And the kids on the campuses did have, some degree of like survivor guilt as well. Like that, if you could get to college, you didn't have to go to war. And that was a huge issue in our country for my whole childhood and young adulthood, was this simmering resentment among men of that age of who was a draft dodger and whose daddy got him out of the war, and who had to go and watch their friends be killed and had to kill and come back with this horrific trauma of having killed women and children and other men your own age from another country. That was a very different time. And those students wanted it to end. And again, it was their peers who were being harvested and killed. And in many ways, their protests were effective. Like it absolutely, captured the attention of the rest of the population when the National Guard killed those kids at Kent State, when the students were shutting everything down. This is, again, it feels manufactured to me. I don't think they're protesting the right things. Like you said, these are the students of the elite institutions. Many of them are the children of very wealthy people. If they're not, they're class jumpers. They're people who want to access that class. And why aren't they asking their trustees to stop paying taxes? Why aren't they asking their parents to stop paying taxes? Like, if we want to end the US war machine, people need to stop paying taxes. And nobody wants, because you'll go to jail. You'll actually risk something.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that as a solution. No taxes without representation. That's sort of how I felt about Canada. And I'm not going to say anything out loud about that. But, I don't want to pay taxes to support what the government is doing in a variety of contexts in Canada, because I think it's horrific, from the gender identity stuff to MAID to, I just sent you that link about Justin Trudeau crowing about providing free birth control to women. We support women's choice, so we're going to provide free contraception to women with my fucking tax dollars.
Totally. We're going to chemically sterilize
this.
Right. We're going to chemically sterilize you on the taxpayer's dime. And then later, when you're so depressed because of these chemicals you're taking that are coming from the government, you can sign up and be killed by the government. That will also be free.
I didn't vote for Justin Trudeau. I didn't vote for the Liberal Party. I didn't vote for any of these policies. I don't like how the healthcare system works in Canada. It doesn't seem to be serving people. People's surgeries are being canceled all over the place. The emergency room is a nightmare. The wait times in emergency rooms in Canada are psycho. 5 hours, 7 hours, sometimes more, depending on where you are. You can't get in to see a doctor. Even when I lived there, so now I've been here for almost 3.5 years. Even before COVID, which of course made everything exponentially worse. I was very lucky to have gotten an actual doctor, so I didn't have to just go to the walk-ins, but it would take me 2 weeks to get an appointment if I could manage to, take time off work at 11 a.m. on a random Tuesday to see a doctor for 3 minutes who behaved as though she hated my guts and then would prescribe me antibiotics. And you were only allowed to talk to them about one thing, not two things. You had to make another appointment for that. And so, most of the time I ended up just going to a walk-in clinic anyway. And I remember, I used to be able to get in to see a nurse practitioner because it would be so hard to get in to see my actual doctor that I was lucky to have scored after having been on a wait list for 7 years or something like that. And then for some reason, they changed the policy and I was no longer allowed to see a nurse practitioner. So before, if I couldn't get in to see my doctor, I'd be like, oh, no, that's okay. I'll just see a nurse practitioner. And because honestly, I would have rather to see a nurse practitioner anyway. So that was just a good excuse. I always liked them better. I had a more positive experience. And they stopped that policy. And it was next to impossible to, it's so hard just to even get an appointment to see a doctor, never mind if you have something serious going on and you need like a surgery or, anything that you would need to go to the hospital for or see a specialist for. Like, this is what we're paying 40% of our taxes for.
Right. I think that most left-leaning and liberal and maybe even moderate Americans think Canada has this idyllic healthcare system. They have no idea how bad it is. What I see just being involved in different medical groups, I'm just seeing evidence of ERs closing, especially Ontario's closing a lot of emergency rooms because they can't staff them. Amy Ham just posted about the nursing shortage and how the nursing schools that used to have wait lists, nursing was a coveted profession, right? And a nursing degree is like this golden goose. So you could always get a job. You're always going to, you can do whatever you want. You can move from different experiences to different experiences. They can't even fill the spots in the nursing programs because she said it's the vaccine mandates and the fact that the profession is very publicly persecuting her for wrongthink as well.
I mean,
no one wants to work in it.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't think that those are the right reasons, but I think it's very unpleasant because I think that they are underfunded and understaffed. So I think it's incredibly stressful to work as a nurse now.
Well, and the stats that I've seen in that Canada fired in some places up to 20% of its nursing staff for refusing the vaccine.
Right. Yeah.
Here in the United States, there were a lot of nurses fired, but most of the facilities, even where I lived, where it was so draconian, you could get an exemption. You were punished so horrifically, like you had to these humiliating swabs up the nose every 2 days that were witnessed. They would make you log in, and then on Zoom, some guy is watching you, like either spit in a tube or stick the swab up your nose so you're not faking your test. Just total humiliation of the nursing staff. But you could keep your job. In Canada, there were no exceptions.
I mean, that created a lot of jobs for people. I remember when that happened in Canada, and I was like, wow, the amount of people that they've hired to watch over the phone, because everybody had to do that. If you came into Canada, you had to log on video on your phone and show them as you were swabbing your nose. So that's, that's so many jobs. And then all those, police that they hired to show up at people's houses to check on them to make sure they're quarantining.
Right. That created a lot of jobs too.
Yeah.
How much of the Canadian healthcare budget is spent on all of that insane security theater and that madness? And now the healthcare system's insolvent and they're encouraging people to kill themselves through the healthcare system. They're shutting down ERs. They don't have any nurses. And I'm not saying it's good down here. I mean, we're collapsing in a different way, but it's so foolish for Americans to think Canada is a better healthcare system than what we have here.
No. And I mean, I, in many ways, still do support universal healthcare. I just can't, I think it's unbelievable that people get sick and then go into tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and have to declare bankruptcy because they had an accident or got sick. I just think that's not something that should happen in the Western world. But yeah, I mean, it's not, Canada brags about its healthcare system endlessly, and it's just not that good. And I just wonder, you probably have a better idea than me, but this free birth control thing, I was like, what is the incentive for this? Because maybe the incentive is just so that Justin Trudeau can say that he did that and hopefully gain the support of unthinking feminists.
Some of that. I think the pharmaceutical industry still has a lot of influence in Canada, right? Even though it's not running the show in the media quite to the extent. It's not legal to direct market drugs to people there, right?
You're not allowed to advertise pharmaceuticals on TV and billboards and things like that as you are in the US.
Right. And here it's most of our ads.
I know, it's always so weird to watch TV in the US coming from Canada. It's all that. And then, it's so humorous in so many ways because then they list all of the side effects, which almost always are much worse than whatever your problem is that you supposedly need this drug to treat.
And every time it sounds like a comedy sketch. It's so insane. So I think that yes, liberals and leftists are completely captured by big pharma and feel that it's better living through chemistry and people love drugs. I think women have been hoodwinked into believing that chemically castrating ourselves is liberation. So I think part of it's pandering to women. And I think that women on birth control are literally neutered. And
Mhm.
I know that the red pilled men and conservatives like to believe women are like sweet and nice. And like I hear Louise Perry talking
Agreeable.
about how agreeable she is. And she's this woman who's had like obviously horrific birth trauma. She's not like, her instincts aren't awake. She's just, she is an agreeable person, but she's not like the women I hang out with who are like wild,
It
I don't
really
think.
makes me angry when very passive women, I'm not talking about Louise Perry specifically necessarily, I like Louise Perry, but like when really passive women assume that all women are very passive and agreeable, because I'm very not agreeable and
Yeah.
I'm not passive and I'm very difficult and unpleasant and intimidating to a lot of people in a lot of ways. Not, because I'm going out of my way to necessarily behave in that way, but I think that's how confident, disagreeable women who have good boundaries and don't care what other people think about them are. But like I'm just not like that. So please don't go around saying that, like, well, women are just so nice and they just go along and they make everybody around them feel comfortable. I know that some women are like that, but I don't particularly like those kinds of women. I don't really hang around those kinds of women.
Exactly. And it's more of that like women can't win reality that, oh, the problem, the world is women are too agreeable. And now that they've taken over, they're so agreeable. And simultaneously, the problem is women are all bitches, right? And that we can't get along. And we're always arguing with each other.
And that women are dangerous.
Women are
I saw
dangerous.
this black activist tweet recently that, white women are still among the most dangerous people in the whole world, because she had this video of a Jewish woman calling the cops on these pro-Hamas protesters who I think were blocking her from getting somewhere, maybe harassing her or something. I don't know the full story, but that claim in and of itself is ridiculous, because we know who commits the vast majority of crimes, especially violent crimes in this world. So give me a freaking break. But it's either that or it's like, but then there's Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, I know. Right. Those are your options. You can be a problem because you're too agreeable, or you can be a problem because you're a bitch. That's it's just how women keep in. But I do think chemically neutering women creates a different kind of woman. And obviously you're out of touch with your instincts. Obviously you don't have full control of your mind when you're on mind altering drugs. And I think that there is a literal neutering of women that's happening. And if Canada's anything like the United States, it's very clear down here that they want as many people on daily drugs as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's still a lot of people on the left, especially like the ruling class on the left, still wants to decrease the population of certain demographic groups. And I think they really are pushing for antinatalism. There's that as well. Yeah.
It's interesting. And actually, to go back to the agreeable women problem, I mean, it wasn't so long ago that we had this phenomenon of anti-Karen hate. Women were being too assertive and calling the manager, calling the cops on men that they were afraid of, because supposedly if you call a cop on a man that happens to be black and is trying to steal your dog from you in a park and acting like a creep, then you're actually trying to have him murdered by the police, because that would totally happen. But like, it's women are too difficult and too assertive and terrible when they're trying to stand up for themselves and get what they want. But also, they're weak and passive, so useless and can't be trusted in politics or positions of power. I heard Tucker Carlson, who again, I really like Tucker Carlson. I don't like everything that he says.
Right.
I heard Tucker Carlson on Rogan. Rogan had him on recently, so I've been gradually working my way through the podcast. I finally got to it today. Say, like, weak. I can't remember if he said weak people or weak men are actually more dangerous than kind of strong aggro men. He was talking about this in the context of politics. And I think that's true, because the
Right.
most dangerous people are all of these people who just go along with authoritarianism or whatever it is. It's not necessarily the person leading the charge. It's not Donald Trump, who may well act like an asshole, but he's not more dangerous than all these people who are like, get your vaccine or we're going to rat on you and chase you out of town and destroy your family and your livelihood.
And take away your kids. If we all think the government should take away your kids. Yeah, those are very dangerous
and
people.
ostracize you from society. But he was saying, like everyone now in power is either, like political power, is either a weak man or a woman. That was the whole phrase, because a weak man and a woman is sort of similar, because women are not strong leaders. And I think that's true in many respects, but I don't know that that's like, I think that Justin Trudeau is equally as bad and pathetic as Jacinda whatever. Was she the Prime Minister of New Zealand? Did I get that right?
Jacinda Ardern, New Zealand.
I always say her last name wrong, sorry.
Yeah, she's interesting.
It's like these people are these like phony, go along with whatever they're supposed to go along with so that they can maintain their positions of power or their jobs or their social status or, their keep their money or whatever. I think all these people are equally as bad. Like, cowards are bad and dangerous. And I think there's plenty of male cowards and plenty of female cowards. I think that women are socialized more to go along, and maybe on some level are more biologically inclined to go along. This is what people say in any case. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I think there's like a division of labor that happens in our species. I do think, to back up to what Tucker Carlson is saying, I think that he's missing the point of reality, which is our elected representatives are just the figureheads installed by the people who really run the world. And for some reason, those people want these ineffectual puppets in place. And I think a big part of that is demoralization. Like, I think that seeing Biden in power is profoundly demoralizing to the United States right now. I think Trump was demoralizing as well. I mean, he was kind of a madman. Compared to Biden, I'm reminiscing about how great it was to have Trump. but it was a destabilizing thing that happened. And I think actually Trump, because he is an elite and he wasn't entirely owned, was able to rig it in a way. I think he was an unauthorized president of the United States. I don't think that the powers that actually be wanted him in there, but they certainly want Biden in there. They want Jacinda. What is her last name? Aragon or something
like Ardern or something.
Ardern, yeah.
I knew that I was going to say it wrong if I tried, so I didn't.
She freaks me out. I mean, just
Ardern.
Ardern, yes. I know. Renee Gerlich was talking about living under her during COVID and how everywhere you went, there were like Mao-styled posters of her face with a halo around her head in all the stores, on the sides of buildings, like you would see of like the great leader of the Ayatollah or Mao or Stalin, that she was being venerated with this iconography all over New Zealand during COVID, that Mama Jacinda was keeping everyone safe by taking away all their rights.
Yeah, they did that with whoever, and now I'm forgetting her name, also the woman who is in charge of public health policy and giving all the press conferences during COVID in BC. They made really disgusting, ugly Fluevog shoes for her.
Wow.
What the hell? Bonnie Henry. I can't believe I forgot her name. But they were trying to raise her up as some kind of deity as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. But these people are not the people who actually run the world, right? They're not the billionaire class. They're not the people who meet in Davos.
But they're more dangerous. Like, I think that's true. I think they are more dangerous.
I think
they're the ones pulling the line, and it's their fault that this is happening. Because I guess these like weirdo billionaires who are trying to push, AI and transhumanism and
Yeah.
populate Mars or whatever, kill off the population so that there's only the elite class left or whatever. Like if everybody didn't go along, if there was genuine democracy and people were willing to stand up and speak out or think critically, then I don't think that would work. They need, a lot of people in the population to go along and to police one another and to scream their mantras at each other and to bully people into participating in this or shame people into participating in it. They need these bureaucrats.
Absolutely. And the bureaucrats get rewarded, that they sometimes get to join the ruling class after they're in power, right? Like think of the Obamas, the Clintons, like they made it to the other side well, now they're billionaires too, because they served their role well. But it's interesting when they get to that point, they're no longer in the figurehead position.
Right.
They're just pulling the strings from behind.
I was thinking when you were talking about birth control that it's funny because there's this cliche of, women as being kind of crazy and emotional and irrational because of hormones. They're so hormonal and women act so crazy around their periods. And I've never experienced that in my life. I've never felt hormonal to the point where it made me feel irrational or overly emotional or crazy. Like I would feel my period in my body or feel different periods of my cycle in my body, but I never felt like I'm losing my mind and I'm just crying for no reason. So I've always been very skeptical of that. And what I actually think, the only time I've ever felt kind of crazy is when I was on the pill. So I went, I was bullied into going onto the pill by my doctor after I miscarried. And this was when I was around, I had been on and off the pill when I was younger, when I was around like 19, 20, and I didn't like it. I just didn't like the way it made me feel. So I went off of it, never went back on it again until I miscarried. And my doctor essentially said to me, not in these words, but I was too irresponsible. I had to be on some hormonal birth control. And I was like, I don't really like it. I don't like the pill. I don't want to go on. And he's like, well, you have to be on something clearly because you made this horrible mistake. I had planned to get an abortion. I've told this story before. I had planned to get an abortion. I didn't want to get an abortion. I was sort of trying to avoid it at all costs, but I couldn't, I couldn't have a baby with the man who was involved. He was an abusive guy. I didn't like him. I didn't want to be attached to him forever. I was living in a trailer. Like I didn't have any money. I was living on a little island in the middle of the woods. Like I was just like, I can't do this. But the thought of getting an abortion was I just did not want to go through with it. And I had gone to the closest abortion doctor nearby, which was, it was about a 3-hour drive from where I was. I had to take the ferry across to the Big Island, drive down the highway. This was the only abortion doctor in the area. So I guess all the young women or girls who needed abortions had to go to him. And he was such an asshole and he was so rude to me and he wouldn't make eye contact with me. And I was like, there's no way that I'm letting this man give me an abortion. So I then had to make an appointment in Vancouver at the women's hospital. And so it was getting further and further along. I wasn't that far along, but I was getting further and further along and I didn't want to go. But anyway, I miscarried and I think I kind of willed myself to miscarry because I didn't want to go through with the abortion. But in any case, the doctor, he essentially pressured and bullied me into going on hormonal birth control. I said I didn't want to go on the pill, and he was like, "Oh, well, these ones are lower hormone." And I was like, "I've tried these. I've been through this already. I don't want to do it. I don't like it. I don't like how it makes me feel." And he was like, "Oh, well, okay, we'll try the patch," as if it's different. Like, try the patch. So I did. I tried the patch, for maybe a week tops, and it made me feel crazy.
Right.
Like I immediately felt it in my body. I felt bloated. My boobs got huge. And I felt crazy and emotional. So I took it off and never went back on again. But it's like, I'm like, are all these women who are going along with this narrative that women are so crazy and emotional and hormonal, are you guys just actually on the pill?
Yeah. Yeah, so many women are on hormone contraception. Interesting to see the percentage of heterosexual women in the US and Canada taking these drugs. It's really high. It's pushed so hard. You know, I remember in my nurse practitioner program of just the constant indoctrination that you have to get every teenage girl on hormonal contraception. And because of what you're describing, that women hate the way they feel when they're taking the pill, and when they take the patch, they pull the patch off or they stop taking the pill. Like, that's actually really common. Women just stop doing it because they don't like how they feel. That's the reason why they're pushing the long active reversible contraceptives. You know, when I hear, again, I don't trash Louise Perry or Mary Harrington or anybody who's discussing, you know, these trends right now, but over and over again, people are talking about the pill, the pill. People need to know the pill is like quaint, almost obsolete. Hardly anyone's on the pill. It's these hormonal IUDs and hormonal rods in the arm, copper IUDs if a woman doesn't want hormones. They want to get devices into women that women can't easily remove themselves.
Because they're irresponsible. That's
Right.
the claim, right? Is like the pill doesn't work because women are always forgetting to take the pill. So, you
Yeah.
know, this is easier. You won't have to think about it. You won't get pregnant.
Right.
I yeah, and I just remembered because somebody in the comments joked and said, "Oh, you got a paper cut? Let's get you on birth control." And I remembered, you know, the amount of women that have told me, or, you know, doctors will say this too, that they went on birth control because they had acne. Like, it's like, oh, well, you know, without birth control, I would have this other problem.
Totally. Or I had bad cramps, or I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. And women don't seem to realize that the pill does not regulate your hormones. The pill suppresses your fertility and turns off your natural menstrual cycle. Yeah, if your issue is like severe debilitating cramp, that's going to give you temporary relief from that. But what I see over and over and over again is you try to come off the pill and it's 10 times worse. You know, your endometriosis rebounds. It's much worse. Your polycystic ovarian syndrome is worse than it's ever been because you're in complete hormonal arrangement. Your mood gets bad. Then you need an antidepressant, according to the same people who gave you the hormonal birth control. The pill, what we call the pill, which it's distressing to me that we don't have better terminology, that we're still using this marketing term from what, like the 40s and 50s, or I guess the 50s and 60s, the pill. You know, oral hormonal contraceptives are mostly used to treat physical problems now. They're not even really used for birth control at this point. They're mostly used for cramps, for endometriosis, for PCOS. When women really want to avoid pregnancy, they're really encouraged to get the other contraceptives, the LARCs, the long-acting reversibles, so the implants, the IUDs. And the shot, that's a really bad one. The Depo-Provera shot is just horrific.
Oh, I know. I can't believe. Are they still doing that?
Yes, they are, mostly in poor communities. Where I see it happening in healthcare is at the school-based health clinics in the United States, which are always in the poorest schools. You don't see those in the upper middle class schools. And the health people say, well, that's because those children are well served. Those girls have primary care providers, but also people funding these programs aren't as interested in sterilizing those girls, right? The ones coming from upper middle class families and middle class families. So they're handing them out in the schools, they're handing them out at Planned Parenthood. Depo is often pushed for women who are squeamish about needles or pelvic exams. The implant is an enormous needle. It's like as big as a drinking straw. And you see that thing and you don't want someone sticking it in your arm. It's enormous. They're like, oh, we'll numb you. It's no big deal.
The implant.
The implant that goes in the arm is it comes loaded in this giant syringe, and the syringe is as wide as an average drinking straw, maybe a tiny bit smaller. It's huge. It's huge. And they put it, when I was trained to do them, they put in the biceps curve here in the cleft there, but now they're putting them in the back of the arm, which is interesting. So you can see them almost on the back of the arm. It used to be a little more For some reason, the science changed. So they used to put them here. They last for 3 to 5 years. Now they put them in the back of the arm. Girls get squeamish and they don't want a needle that big. And some girls still have they still have their instincts intact enough that they don't want an implant in their arm because it's all cyborgy. And then they often don't want the extreme pain of an IUD insertion, which if you haven't had a baby, an IUD insertion is excruciating. As someone who has witnessed, I've never performed a vasectomy, but I've witnessed multiple vasectomies just as a healthcare provider. An IUD insertion in a woman who hasn't had a baby is far more uncomfortable and just a far more painful procedure than a vasectomy. It's excruciating. It's horrible. So if girls don't want that option, then is dead, because it's another way to like get it out of her hands. And then you've got her sterilized for 3 months. You get her to come back and give it to her again. And honestly, if you give it enough times, often you've sterilized her for life. Many women say their fertility never came back after an adolescence spent on Depo-Provera.
Unbelievable. What are, I guess I'm wondering what the causes are of things like, when girls or young women are prescribed hormonal birth control to treat really bad cramps or polycystic
ovarian syndrome.
Polycystic ovarian syndrome.
PCOS is what.
Right. PCOS. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I won't try to say that out loud anymore. I've read it so many times, and then I was like, I don't know if I've ever said this out loud, and I'm going to screw it up. But because I just feel like, once again, it's the healthcare system that's actually not dealing with the problem. They're not actually trying to address the underlying problem that's causing these girls to have such bad cramps that they feel like they need to go on hormonal birth control just to deal with that, or these other issues with their reproductive systems and their bodies. And surely there's other advice that could be offered. Surely there's a reason. I remember when I was young, when I was, 17, 18, I would get really, really bad cramps and I would sometimes faint and black out. And I didn't really know why or what to do, and nobody offered me any help or advice in that regard. But eventually I figured out on my own that it was mostly just health related. It was that I was iron deficient. I wasn't eating enough red meat. I wasn't drinking enough water. Sometimes I was hungover, and that's going to make your cramps way worse. Like I was a smoker then, I smoked from the time I was 13 to 21. I dealt with that stuff on my own through changes to my nutrition, to my diet and my lifestyle and things like that.
Yeah, your uterus is talking to you and telling you she's unhappy with the way you're living your life. And I think most of the time menstrual cramps can be treated with diet. I remember discovering as a teenager, if I exercise at least 3-4 times a week, I don't get menstrual cramps. That was like a magic cure for me. If I eat enough, you get enough good fats. There are many herbs that can help with menstrual cramps, things you can take daily, like raspberry tea, things you can take for cramps, like cramp bark. Our ancestors named it cramp bark, and it helps,
You can buy period tea, and it works very well. Herbs. Yeah. I found a lot of herbal solutions, things like a hot water bottle and a bath help a lot. I would be taking so much Advil, and then I realized that actually a hot water bottle helped more than anything.
Yeah. And I think that taking a day off, a lot of girls are pushing it too hard. And, with very good reasons, women clamored to be allowed in entrance into academia and into professional life. But that world was set up by men who don't cycle, and women often need rest around their period, and a day off while you're bleeding is a really good thing to have. For not all women need that, but some women.
But you're always I wasn't tuned into my body enough to ever know when my period was coming for most of my 20s and 30s even. It's like, what? Again, this just happened. But my body would always be telling me, because I'd be exhausted, basic things like I'd be so tired, maybe you just need to get some more rest.
Totally. You're busy. It's a ton of metabolic expenditure to to be menstruating. Like, it's just, you're busy, you're already working. So unfortunately, workforce was designed for men, and now it's designed for robots. Like, it's designed to like not even have a body, right? It's just everyone's kind of dissociated. So yeah, we don't address any of that. Americans are very brainwashed to believe that taking a daily pill is the same as curing a condition. It's still considered very radical to talk about how lifelong pharmaceutical management is not the same as healing, and that healing is possible, that you can actually get better and not have these problems anymore. But the way to do that is not to start taking daily pharmaceuticals, which just turns you into a chronic illness person. And that often starts in adolescence with the birth control pill, right? I need this medication because my body's not right. And it's kind of it's like the kid version of my first pharmaceutical, right? My first daily pharmaceutical is often the birth control pill.
Now maybe meth more.
No,
So.
Adderall. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's getting younger and younger. Adderall, definitely.
I mean, how would you ever learn, in terms of those drugs for things like depression and anxiety that you, of course, now need drugs to treat? Like, how are you ever going to learn how to deal with your problem of anxiety or your problem of depression if your whole life you've just been taking drugs when you feel this way?
People don't want to take responsibility. They don't want to be well, is always shocking to me.
Yeah.
As we, again, coming back to it again and again, because I'm clearly not over the trauma of what we call COVID, but it was so shocking to me to realize most people don't want to be free. Most people don't appreciate their freedom. And I know that's what all the architects of the Constitution warned against. But this has been a phenomenon for a while, but most people don't want to be healthy. Health is freedom. They would rather say, I have a brain disease called depression. It's a chemical imbalance, even though there's absolutely zero medical evidence of that. People get mad when you mention there's no evidence of it. And I have to take these daily drugs because my brain is different from yours. I'm different and special. And you never really had anxiety. What you had was different.
Well, yeah. And I think that the fear of freedom is that then you're responsible for yourself. So you're responsible for dealing with your problems and the complications of life. You're responsible for dealing with your health. You do have to be a sovereign, autonomous being. You're responsible for things that happen in your life. And I think people don't want that part of freedom. I think that freedom is too much, or it feels like too much responsibility for a lot of people who would rather just be like, oh, there's a thing wrong with me. Please tell me what to do. Okay, I'll take this pill. Now I don't have to think about this anymore. I don't have to change my lifestyle. I don't have to change my diet. I don't have to start exercising. Those things aren't easy. In the long run, they are easy because they make you feel so much better, and because they give you control over your life and your body, and because these are great things and they really do improve your health.
Right.
By a lot. But, like, to change your habits is a hard thing to do, to change your eating habits, to change your lifestyle, to, maybe you are too tired and stressed, and that means you need to quit your job and get a different job. Right. Going to the gym sucks. It does suck, but it makes you feel better in the long run.
Want to embrace the discomfort of having a body is really radical in our culture as well. And just to know, like, sometimes your body doesn't feel good and you need to tune in and listen, and rather than what pill can I take to feel better right away. But it is definitely a culturation process. I see that this is the first daily pharmaceutical. The implants are probably enculturating this generation toward things like, oh, that Neuralink thing you sent me. Like, people excited.
Who would do that voluntarily? I can't believe it. Like, people really ignore all of their human instincts.
Yeah.
If you had any human instinct left in you, you would never let some like big tech company insert anything into your brain.
Right.
Like, you can just imagine, and you can't imagine.
I know
all of the potential consequences and impacts of that.
Well, and at this point, that's everyone's instincts are so damaged. Almost everybody, right? That everyone's born drugged with their mom all hooked up to machines. Like people are literally oxytocin bonded from birth to machine beeping and technology. That's well over 90% of the population in the United States. And then now all these parents who like put sensors on their baby that come to their smartphone. The baby's napping, you have the sensor of like all your baby's vital signs. That's happening. That's been happening for over a decade. And you have an implant in your
don't
arm.
trust your own instincts. Those are
No.
dangerous. Hook them up to this machine instead.
Exactly. It's not like, every other species that just has a feeling.
How did we make it this far without these technologies?
Our ancestors were so stupid. It's amazing any of us survived. And obviously I have my bias as a midwife, but we do not talk nearly enough about industrialized birth and how it has messed up mothers and women and all of humanity, because all of humanity enters humanity through the birth process. And if you want to talk about women becoming too agreeable, let's talk about the shift from into the hospital. Women didn't go easily into the hospital. They were hoodwinked, they were coerced, they were socially corralled. And when they got there in labor, the original hospital birth was they were drugged against their will. They were given general anesthesia. Their babies were yanked out. Women didn't like that. And then in the 80s, they hoodwinked women into thinking they were in charge and, oh, you can choose. And suddenly 95% of women are numb from the waist down, hooked up to all these machines and thinking that's better than just being unconscious. At least when you're unconscious, the power dynamic is clear, right? Like we know you are not an active participant in this process and you're being done to. And it looks pretty fucked up, right? You strap a woman to the bed with leather restraints. That looks pretty fucked up, but you put a pink and blue belt around her belly and an IV tube that there's absolutely no medical evidence supporting in terms of better outcomes. And a blood pressure cuff on the other side going off every 15 minutes. That's all fine. That has nothing to do with the past when we used leather restraints, right? So all women are having their instincts destroyed in the birth process. Which is, creating a lot of craziness. And that happened around the same time the powers that be wanted to start chemically neutering a little bit earlier, but the pill was really mainstreamed in the 60s, first for married women and then for all women.
When was midwifery criminalized?
Midwifery was criminalized in the United States through the end of the 1800s. They went state to state. The American Medical Association went state to state, and they did it through the abortion laws. Abortion was pretty much legal until what was called quickening. There was lots of abortion happening. They called it menstrual regulation services. It was legal until you could feel the baby move. And then suddenly everybody decided, the medical establishment wanted to take over birth and get rid of the midwives. And they realized they couldn't do it by saying the midwives were worse birth attendants, because women knew the midwives are better birth attendants. This is before blood transfusions, before antibiotics. Doctors weren't washing their hands. Doctors had horrific outcomes compared to midwives. So they criminalized abortion and got rid of all the midwives. So by the turn of the last century, almost all births were being attended by male physicians at home. There were still in immigrant communities, women were using midwives. And in the South, and among Black women, there were still quite a few midwives. And then after World War II, birth was moved en masse into the hospital. It was modern. There was just this push. There was a lot of social control happening. And there was a real stigmatization of you're poor, dirty, backward if you stayed at home. There was so much social coercion, and there were hardly any midwives left, and the doctors stopped doing home births. Like the doctors just stopped attending home births for the most part. So there was nobody. The midwives were all illegal, and the doctors wouldn't do it. So women were coerced into the hospital in the 50s.
Yeah, I guess because to me it just seems like everything went awry for women in particular, but also in terms of this forced dependence on big pharma, and this kind of healthcare system that isn't a healthcare system at all, when midwives were criminalized in this at the time, male-led medical establishment took over and taught everybody that they couldn't trust their bodies and they couldn't trust their instincts and they could not take their health into their own hands. And we are the experts and we know what you need. I mean, it's hilarious that anybody would trust the medical establishment or the healthcare system after what happened during COVID, because they displayed, even if you still believe that this vaccine works, even if you still believe that COVID is this terrifying, deadly virus, they flailed throughout and changed their minds about everything. And, first it was don't touch everything, and it spread, you have to bleach everything in your house and sanitize your hands. And then it was, spread this way. And, the first, they put all these people on respirators who died as a result. And, they had no idea what they were doing, but still they got to be the experts and everybody had to listen to them and believe them. But they changed their mind every however many months, And
people would get so upset if you pointed out, no one knows anything because this didn't exist 6 weeks ago. And I'm like, you need to trust the experts. You need to trust the experts. Remember when the experts told us COVID could live for 2 weeks on an Amazon package and people were just like leaving their stuff on their porch? And all of these thieves start taking advantage of it because everyone's too afraid to bring the Amazon package in their house because it might have COVID on the box. And then suddenly it's like, oh no, it's not spread through surfaces. Nobody ever said that it was so insane. And to me, as someone who's been in the medical system as a provider for decades now, that was just an exaggeration of what happens all the time. Like when I became a midwife, there was all of this animosity toward midwives that we weren't safe. And one of the things they kept saying was we didn't have the right neonatal resuscitation equipment because we couldn't access these ambu bags and provide 100% oxygen. And you can't do a resuscitation without 100% oxygen or the baby will not be resuscitated. That's why midwives should be criminalized because this is hospital grade equipment. Now, in the last 15 years, if it's malpractice to give 100% oxygen to a baby, and we're using room air instead because the science changed, and it drastically changed where they were certain because the studies showed you had to use 100% oxygen or you were a bad provider and you weren't going to resuscitate that baby well. And now it's like, oh no, if you use 100% oxygen, you're going to kill the baby and cause all this damage. And you're a bad provider if you do that because you're outdated. And this is just one example. The CPR, just basic CPR has changed. The drugs that we used to use for childhood illnesses when my kids were little are now banned for those uses, even though it was the standard of care there. And this is like the 90s. There was a huge body of studies. This wasn't like the 1890s where you're just like throwing arsenic at things. Like they had done studies to approve these drugs through the FDA, but now we know those were bad, even though before we knew it we had not to use them. So what happened during COVID was the curtain being pulled back for everyone and how quickly it was happening. Within 48 hours, they were saying something different, like completely contradicting themselves.
This is actually a really good question because I wanted to ask you about this too. Onomatopoeia 4 asks, Mary Lou, can you talk about HRT for menopause? I know the hormones are bioidentical versus synthetic, like in birth control, but are they really medically necessary or is it another big pharma scam? I mean, because I've been learning about, I have not learned very much. I don't know anything still about bioidentical hormones because they've been suggested to me because, they're given to women essentially so that they can avoid going through menopause or experiencing perimenopause. I know women who are on bioidentical hormones and really, sing their praises. But, I'm always skeptical of this kind of thing. So
I really think we should start calling hormonal replacement therapy or HRT menopause blockers in the way we talk about puberty blockers.
Okay.
people are adults and can make their own decisions, but no woman will die without hormone replacement therapy. They are never necessary for physical life to continue, like antibiotics sometimes are, or even blood pressure medication can be. Certainly insulin is. So we are very anti-aging culture. As I just said, like even if you're not a child who's been captured by the transgender industry, if you're a girl in this culture, it's rare to escape puberty without being put on hormone, something that kept you from feeling your actual cycle and kept you from actually getting to know who you were in that phase of life. All of our births are drugged. It's such a tiny subset of the population that experiences an unmedicalized pregnancy and birth. Like the wild pregnancy movement is it's not even 1% of the population. So I think statistically we say 100% of women are passing the physical experience of pregnancy and birth and having a completely medicalized experience. And now we're all having that with menopause. That is what's being marketed to us. And all of the physical sensations of menopause are considered pathological, like period cramps. Take this pill and it'll go away, rather than what's your body telling you. And can we do to change the experience? So I think, that's being marketed really hard. And I think, adults can do what they want, but people on drugs often their friends to also be on drugs. I think we've all seen that, whether it's our pot smoking friends or our friends on Adderall now. And now all the women on HRT are really pushing other women to get on HRT. I think that people like it when they're on drugs. They like other people to be on drugs. So menopause is like getting your period and puberty, and like childbirth is a rite of passage. It changes you. As women, we have this really fascinating experience that men don't have, where we are different people in different phases of our life. And I obviously am a proponent of experiencing that. I think that there's a value to that. As a medical provider, I'd say the times I recommend hormone replacement therapy are when women are just so miserable they cannot function, and everything we've tried isn't working. But even then, it's pretty clear it's because this woman can't quit her stressful job, or she can't leave this stressful home situation, or she's being sued in the courts by some abusive man for custody of her children. These are the things that often create horrific menopause. And sometimes women can't escape that. So these drugs help women tolerate what should be intolerable circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of what I always think when women tell me that they get so crazy around their periods, or like, how we get, I was crying for no reason. And, like, I'm so stressed out and I'm so upset and I don't know why. And I'm like, I bet you do know why.
Yeah.
I bet you do know why. I bet it might be because your boyfriend is a piece of shit.
There you go. Totally.
That's why you're crying. Because you're unhappy in your shitty relationship.
One of my mentors, who was my primary herb teacher, Taroni Lodog, she used to say, can we relabel PMS as premenstrual honesty? And that everything that's coming up is real. Women are not psychotic at that time. And it's like, you're upset because you really are the only one in the house who ever cleans the toilet, or you're upset because, you don't have time to take care of yourself. And everything that is upsetting you at that time is a chance to evaluate how you're going to treat yourself the next cycle, right? You're going to bleed, release, let it go, and then treat yourself well. And your premenstrual time is your time of truth, right? It's a time of honesty of like, how'd you do that cycle? Did you get enough sleep? Did you eat well? Did you drink too much? How much caffeine were you using? Did you let people push you around? Like, you have the lump under the rug has to be examined at that time. But that's not the American way, certainly not the Western way right now. Instead, let's just drug it and women crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I always sort of feel like I'm bragging when I say this, and maybe I am bragging. I don't know that I'm intending to, but maybe that's actually what I'm doing subconsciously, is that, like, I feel like I don't feel emotionally crazy, and I don't have anxiety, and I don't have depression because I've made choices in my life and my lifestyle to ensure that I don't have a stressful life. So, like
Yeah.
I've chosen to not have a job that makes me miserable and stressed out. I've chosen to balance my life between, working that I enjoy. I mean, there's lots of parts of my work that I don't love doing, but it doesn't make me feel oppressed and miserable.
Right.
Um, or like I'm selling myself out, I'm selling my soul or something like that for a paycheck. And, like I make a lot less money than most people that I know, and I balance my life between, like seeing friends and having a social life and having a relationship and having time to myself and taking breaks. And I make sure that I get enough, I sleep for 8 or 9 hours every night. And
Mhm.
so many people sleep for like 5 or 6 hours a night. Like,
Yeah.
of course, you're going to feel depressed and stressed
Mhm.
out and have anxiety, and your health is going to be bad. Like, I can't, if I didn't
Right.
get in, if I don't get enough sleep for one day, I feel depressed and stressed out and like I'm not functional and like my brain isn't working properly and I don't eat properly and my workout sucks if I can even make it to the gym because I'm so tired. And it's like you have to make choices and then be accountable for those choices and stop pretending that you don't have any choice. And I'm sure,
Yeah.
like a lot of women in the world don't have a choice. Like if you're a single mom, you don't have a lot of choices in terms of trying to take care of your kids if they're little and how many jobs you have to work and so on and so forth. So I understand that that's a stressful situation, but I don't think most people, are in that. Like if you're a middle class person living in Vancouver and you're anxious and you feel depressed and you feel like shit, like that's kind of your fault. And you
Yeah.
could make a different choice, and you're not making a different choice because you don't want to take the risk, or you don't want to
Mhm.
take the pay cut, or you don't want to experience discomfort. And, like people need to start owning that, I think.
Right, exactly. But people are just very out of touch with themselves, and it's just stress that we have to live amongst the masses that are like that. And a lot of people don't want to be in touch with themselves. Like I think of simple things like the number of people who still wake up to alarm clocks and who
Oh
haven't,
God. Yeah.
right? Who haven't
Torture.
figured out that you can tell yourself when to wake up. Like you can learn to wake up. Like the vast majority of people can do that, but you can't if you're on sleeping pills, if you're on antidepressants. Honestly, it's harder if you're on the pill. Like if you're taking all these drugs that suppress your natural, what we call intuition or instinct, um, you were not in charge of your life, and now you're waking up to this shock every morning. What does that do to your nervous system and your adrenals to wake up to something that's literally called an alarm clock? Like your day starts with being alarmed in your nervous system. That's very distressing, and that's just one tiny piece of how out of touch we are, and we don't
It's
address
so
that.
stressful. It's
Yeah.
such a horrible way to wake up. And I haven't done that in years, again, because I made choices and, you
Mhm.
know, took risks to like leave those kinds of, office jobs and whatnot that, you know,
Your body knows what 6 hours feels like, and, like, what are we doing in our the way we're raising kids and the way we're raising young people to not get people into their bodies? Like, even if you have to
Mm.
wake up, even if you hadn't set your life up like that, if don't you usually wake up before the alarm, like, if you're flying or something?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say is that
Yeah.
usually when I do have to set an alarm, like if I have to wake up, I don't wake up in the morning ever. So if I have to wake up at like 6 AM, yeah, I'm gonna
Yeah.
set up for a flight and set an
Yeah.
alarm. But I'm always up, like 2 hours or an hour. I usually don't even sleep at all when I have a flight because I'm so
Yeah.
worried about waking up and worried about like falling asleep because I'm nocturnal. And so I don't usually go to bed until 3 AM
Oh,
as it
yeah.
is. And if I have to wake up at 5 AM, then it's like, okay, sleep for 2 hours. But yeah, I always wake up
Yeah.
before my alarm goes off. I've never just been like shocked awake. I'm always already awake, right?
Totally, totally. I mean, I'm usually will wake up even if I'm really, really tired, I'll wait and I've set an alarm because I'm flying. That's usually when I have an alarm set. I always wake up at least a few minutes before the alarm goes off. But it's that like that's an important life skill to be in tune with your body and to understand that our conscious mind is just a tiny bit of what our body is doing that I mean, thank God we don't have to be conscious of everything our liver is doing all day and all night. That's the intelligence of our body. And we write it off as though it's some woo-woo insane thing to honor the intelligence of our body and how it moves through time and space and how we know what 6 hours feels like. We can tell ourselves, I'm gonna sleep for 6 hours. Like, it's just one tiny example. So anyway, I think that we're so out of touch. We live our lives that way. Women who have neutered themselves chemically for decades, then had crazy techno pregnancies and birth, and then were on antidepressants for the depression that arose after that terrible experience. Maybe took a lot of stimulants, whether in the form of coffee or their ADD meds. They hit menopause and the reckoning is insane. Like, it's a very clarifying time. And you're changing, you're exiting this estrogen induced fairy hole, and the whole world different. Men look different. Your desire to caretake others is different. You are a different person. And it's like a crucible of transformation. And it's very uncomfortable. If it's the first time you've ever been present with intense sensation in your body and you live in this culture, you're going to medicalize that. What I and many other women, kind of figure out and then talk to each other is like, hot flushes are often too many carbs or too much alcohol or too much sugar, like that. That'll, really getting clear. A lot of women hit perimenopause.
Processed food, like that'll make you feel like hell when your period comes.
Exactly. And then as you're aging and you're clarifying, and to me, it's like you're at this place where, oh, like, I want to live in this body for at least another 30 years. I can't get away with anything. My body is going to give me almost instant feedback if I'm not treating it well, which is probably why my Achilles tendon hurts right now. But, so you reach this place where you have to get really honest with yourself. And if you've never addressed it, you've never just been with your cycle, and let things happen. You didn't experience the insane intensity of birth that, natural birth changes you that way. You're blindsided. You don't know how to be in your body when it's changing. And then on top of that, all the anti-aging and what does Gail Dines say? Like, you're either, as women, we're either fuckable or invisible. And instead of embracing the amazing superpower of invisibility that comes with aging as a woman, like, that's the superpower
you don't
everyone
have to be
wants.
self-conscious anymore because nobody's looking at you and nobody's watching you and nobody's judging you because you just blend in. Nobody's
totally. And you can like be a spy. You could, I swear, like,
you're very powerful. I mean, you
Postmenopause,
don't give a shit what people think about you. You don't need to give a shit what people think about you. You're not trying to attract those men, so you don't care what they think. You don't care what those
And instead, women are still trying to be a dating pool. They're still trying to be sexy. They don't like what's happening with their skin. They don't like,
honestly.
It's so sad. The whole graying of the hair, that's been an interesting one for me to sit with, because I, my mom had hair like yours and never grayed. Like, all the redheads in my family stayed, like, I had like 90-year-old redheads in my family. Like, my mom's side of the family, they had like fairy blood and didn't age, and they like their hair, they aged, but their hair never grayed. My dad's side of the family grayed really fast. My dad was completely gray by age 30. So I'm having like a normal graying experience, but I was kind of banking on having my maternal lineage hair. So it's been interesting being with it. And I'm sitting with like other mammals and seeing how the other great apes revere the silver hair ones, right? Like, it's like that. This is an important thing in our process as a species, and that we know to seek advice and leadership from the silver hair members of our species, because that one knows how not to die. Right? That one has had a lot of life experience and knows how to survive. And we're losing that. Like, how often do we see women who are just letting their hair gray? It's really, really sad to me that we've lost that sisterhood as well. Like, we, as women, we're just being ripped off, that we have so few wild women left, So that process is crazy. Letting go of all the, leaving fertility behind is intense. So yeah, if you want to block that and bypass that and not feel the physical sensations of it, we have menopause blockers that are for sale and readily available, and some of them readily available without a prescription now. And
What's the difference between bioidentical and synthetic hormones?
oh, it depends on who you ask. From my perspective as a provider, bioidentical means outside of FDA and big pharma regulation and usually made by compounding pharmacists. And synthetic is what's called the standardized FDA approved hormone replacement therapy. It's really a coup on the part of I'm not even going to say natural medicine, on the alternative medicine, like the not corporate medicine industry, to sell women this idea that they can take hormones that aren't really hormones because they're bioidentical, but they're synthetic hormones. They're made in a lab. They are hormone replacement therapy. They have similar risks. You can get formulations of estrogen that are not as dangerous to your heart and your cardiovascular system in general, and in terms of blood clots, and aren't quite as carcinogenic, but they're still synthetic. They're not dug up for root. They're made by compounding pharmacists, so they are pharmaceuticals. But there's a big marketing campaign to make women think they're natural.
Yeah, that was the impression that I got.
Everyone's on hormones. The men are all wanting not to age, they're all taking testosterone now. The number of men on testosterone is really out of control as well. And women are taking testosterone. They're getting these like testosterone pellets in their ass and get like they're all rate. They're like, I don't know why I'm so angry. I'm like, well, I know, because you have a testosterone pellet in your ass. Like, it's like now you feel like a teenage boy and
I think people are, I mean, when I was, being consulted, I guess, about bioidentical hormones, it was like I had the option of taking like a very small dosage of testosterone and progesterone. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
I just was like, I don't feel like I need these things because I feel fine. I feel pretty good. So thanks for the info. But I think that a lot of women worry about putting on weight, because it's a lot harder to lose weight as you get older. It's workouts get harder and you see the results much less quickly. You can't get to the same place that you could when you were younger, obviously. And they worry a lot about losing their libidos. So I think that's like kind of the main thing around that.
Well, I think that's another thing, is like your libido changes and you're no longer just randomly interested in sex. Like you have to actually like the guy, and you have to work harder at it. Like, you honestly, Mother Nature is not interested in women past fertility having babies. So we don't have that same reproductive drive. But absolutely, women can have happy, healthy sex lives afterwards. Again, my teacher, Tarone, I remember her just hammering this home to us of use it or lose it. Like, you have to stay sexually active. Carol Downer talked about this too, of like women going through menopause and postmenopausal women who want to keep the option of being sexually active need to be masturbating. They need to be pleasuring themselves, or they need to be having sex. Like you have to keep the store open for business, because one thing that happen as we age, again, because nature doesn't care for reproducing anymore because we're not fertile, is if you are not staying sexually active, you will experience vaginal atrophy. And that's a real drag. And that is a place where I think hormone
it won't work anymore.
And shrivel up. It's really sad. It gets very small. So, but you can replump it
small in a good way, I guess. Sorry, that's
not like women can't win. Megan, women can't win. No, and it could get painful. Like the tissues get thin because estrogen keeps tissues really plump. Arousal, and so does orgasm. So an orgasm a day will keep the shriveling away.
That's bad.
I know. Okay. But that is a place where
I
know, it's like trying to explain to a teenager about birth, right? It's like, that's, don't tell me anymore. But it does happen. So women need to know how to protect their sexual health, right? So staying sexually active, even with yourself, is going to keep the option open for you. If women have experienced atrophy, which means everything's shrinking and getting smaller, that is a place where short course topical estrogen can revitalize the area and fairly low risk. As long as you're not a cancer survivor, the risks to that are not very high. People are giving hormone replacement therapy to breast cancer survivors now. And it's so insane how cavalier we are with these drugs. Like, this is just like, we're just handing out hormones like crazy. Yeah.
It's been an hour and a half. Do you want to continue, or do you want to shut things down here?
Is there anything else we need to talk about, or
I'm good, but it's up to you.
No, I think we can end now, unless anyone has any questions or anything.
I feel happy with this conversation.
Good.
Personally. How does everybody in the audience feel? Okay, well, let's end things then. Thank you so much for all this information, Mary Lou. I feel like I just constantly am trying to get intel out of you, and then I'll forget, and then I'll need reminders, and I'll ask again. But some of it's sinking in, I promise.
Well, I'm always happy to talk about women's health, and I think it's it was my entry into radical politics was the women's health aspect of it, and it remains more relevant than ever.
I've changed my mind about everything because of you. I mean, I think even my views on COVID that, started out in the first couple of weeks, that was like, everybody stay inside. Like, I was just like, everybody stop complaining, like I didn't see what was coming. And, there was lots of conversations and people that I was exposed to through the podcast, actually, that changed my mind about what was really going on. But then also talking to you about what was going on changed my mind. But also, like when I was younger, I was like, if I ever gave birth, I would want to be out. I was like, I couldn't imagine why anybody would want to have a natural birth. I couldn't imagine why, anybody would be like, if you had the option to avoid menopause, of course, why wouldn't you? It wasn't, I was never sold on big pharma because I came from an anti-authoritarian father who was skeptical of big pharma and taught us not to overuse antibiotics even and things like that. And, don't necessarily trust your doctor. But, in terms of my reproductive system, in terms of things like hormonal birth control, I had an inherent reaction to birth control, which was like, I don't like how this makes me feel. But I didn't really understand all the repercussions and harms until later. But I mean, that's, it's maddening how little women of my generation and younger learn about their reproductive systems and their bodies, and how much they're taught that they can't trust themselves and they have to trust their doctor, while their doctor is prescribing these really harmful drugs to them and not helping them with their problems at all.
Right. It's one of the most frustrating things to witness for me is people are on that loop that you're describing, that they're just trusting their doctor and they're trying to drug every discomfort, and they're getting increasingly angry at the doctors for not listening. We see this a lot, like, doctors, why can't the doctor fix me? And it's because they can't fix anybody. All the mainstream medical system has to offer is a lifelong pharmaceutical dependence for you, right? They don't offer to heal anything outside of trauma medicine.
Did they talk to you about food ever? No. Like, that's probably the main thing, like what you're eating, what you're putting in your body.
I remember the first time I got reprimanded in my nurse practitioner program, which then started happening a lot. And the one that was the shocking one to me was working in a pediatric urgent care, and I was being supervised and observed. And this kid just kept having respiratory infection after respiratory infection with all this snot. And I recommended going off sugar and all the artificial dyes. And then I said, go off dairy for a week because dairy's congesting. And I was pulled aside and said that there's no evidence. They said, there's no evidence that dairy's congesting. I thought, do you live in a body? Like, have you ever
had a cold and then had a glass of milk? How did you feel?
Exactly. Exactly. More congested. Like, I don't need a study because I live in a body. I also had little kids who were snotty, and I accidentally gave them dairy, and then they were more snotty. So no, they don't talk about nutrition. It's actively discouraged to. It's still radical to talk about that. But what they do like to do is get you on drugs forever and then give you more drugs for the side effects of those drugs. And
Oh, God, yeah. I'm thinking about like the UTI antibiotic yeast infection cycle that I saw so many of my girlfriends have when we were younger. And it was like, you have a UTI, so from, having sex and then, or having painful sex or uncomfortable sex or sex with somebody who's, I don't know, dirty.
Your body,
your body's rejecting them.
Exactly.
And then so you get a UTI and then they put you on antibiotics and then the antibiotics fuck up your gut and the antibiotics give you a yeast infection and then you have to go on drugs for the yeast infection and then you get sick because your immune system is down and then it's just this horrible, you have no immune system to fight off a UTI. Like it's this horrible vicious cycle that's never fixed.
Right. And then we've all witnessed that. And then you have like chronic bacterial vaginosis because the whole ecology of your vagina is completely fucked after that. And they still have nothing like that. There's nothing that Western medicine has to heal that. They do short course, like another short course of antibiotics. And now we're giving the antifungals and people can't see it. There's still so much allegiance to it. They just can't see it. And people always tell me, well, life is so much better and we all would have died before age 35, which is just not true. And I know that because I was the child of a really intense genealogist. Like I know. And I also had a lot of elders in my family who were well over 90 years old. Like it's not true that before we started drugging everyone dropped dead by 45, right? There's just this faith in this system that is making us so sick.
Yeah.
More Orwellian, like it's so clear big pharma is making us sicker and sicker and sicker, but we're all being told it's making us healthier and healthier.
Big pharma is killing us. I mean, the opioid crisis is a great example of that.
Totally.
Anyway, on that happy note, everybody have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm going out.
Yay.
To poison my body.
Hope it doesn't give you
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We're here every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific and 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can find Mary Lou on Twitter at ML_Singleton, at enchantedfamilymedicine.com or on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton. I'm at www.meganmurphy.ca. And I don't say the www because I'm stupid and old. It's because I think for some reason, if you just type in meganmurphy.ca, it doesn't link to the site properly. Maybe I am stupid and old, but that seems to... Okay, I take it back. I'm stupid and old. Anyway, you can find me at www.meganmurphy.ca. So please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube to support the channel. And I've been trying to put the audio from these streams up on my Substack and on Spotify. I still haven't gotten to last week's yet. I haven't had time, so I'm really sorry about that. But I'm trying to get through them all. And my merch, which I've tried to make as offensive as possible, is now I was like home on Friday night last week, like making merch and like LOLing to myself in my bedroom and was like, I was chatting to, I was like, should I make a t-shirt that says gay and retarded? I was like, am I the only one that thinks this is funny or do other people think this is fun? I was like, I don't care because this is like making me laugh so much. So, if anybody wants a t-shirt that says gay and retarded, I have them over at my shop, which I've linked to on YouTube, but it's at Fourth Wall under like the same drugs, or it might be under my name. Anyway, it's linked to down there. And is it? If it isn't, then I'll stick it in shortly. Clearly I'm very organized. And I hope to see you all next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.